Woman in pink there.
George Osborne says that he wants to take us through this pain together, but the Chartered Institute of Personality Development said yesterday that the cuts are going to hit people in the north the hardest and the most economically and socially deprived people in this country. So he's talking complete rubbish. George Osborne won't suffer when local swimming pools and libraries close down because he'll just go to his private health club, and I'm sure he's got his own library of his own.
Jeremy Hunt,
The first thing that I did when I became Culture Secretary was counsel chauffeur-driven cars for the ministers in my department, which Ben and his team enjoyed, which cost £250,000 a year. One of the first things that David Cameron did was cut ministerial pay by 5%. And we are absolutely saying that we're all in this together. And I have to say to Salma that the most dangerous thing for the most vulnerable people in society is to lose control of the national finances, because the national finances are what fund the vital public services that they all depend on. And what we can do if we really want to protect them is to make sure that we take the difficult decisions now before it gets much, much worse. And what I also say to Ben is, look at what we've actually done. You said that we were going to cut Sure Start. We didn't. You said we were going to cut the schools budget. We didn't. You said that we were going to cut the 16 to 19 budget. We didn't. Everything we have done has been exactly as Toby says. We have been trying really hard to make sure we protect vital public services to deal with the problem that we've inherited and that we urgently need to sort out.
Ben Bradshaw. Well, you were going to make cuts, weren't you, anyway? I mean, how are you second-guessing the cuts that are going to be made or haven't yet been announced?
Well, we have to wait and see, but I think Salma said something really, really important. The critical issue here, we all accept that the deficit has got to be reduced. The critical issue here is what is the balance between tax increases and spending cuts? What the coalition appears to want to do now is to have tax increases at 1 and spending cuts at 4 in terms of a ratio. What the Liberal Democrats, of course, said before the election was they wanted 2.5 to 1, so there's a huge gap. Now, how is that gap going to be narrowed? Our argument will be that there should be a much more balanced package to protect the vulnerable, to protect our vital public services, and to make sure that those with the broadest shoulders carry the heaviest burden.
I'm sorry, I just can't accept Ben saying this, because his government left £50 billion of unallocated spending cuts at the time of the last election. And I think, Ben, for you to engage in this debate, rather than just criticising the cuts, you've actually got to say what you would do instead. Otherwise, it's just carping from the sidelines about a problem that you actually created.
The woman in the second row there, with the spectacles on, yes. That's you.
No spectacles?
You haven't got spectacles, sorry. It's still you. No, you have. Go on.
Surely it's the right thing in a democratic society to ask the people what they think, but surely, all credit to the government that we now have, they're also looking to a good model that's worked, i.e. Canada, to see what they're suggesting.
Okay, and the man in red up there on the right, you said.
It is all well and good just emphasising the need for cuts. What is the point of making cuts when a lot of people will be put out of work? As much, if not more, emphasis has got to be put on economic growth. Yes. We need more jobs, more wealth creation. That will do a lot more for this society and this country than just making cuts. More emphasis on that, please.
Okay. Just before we leave this topic, a question from George Coyley, could we have, please? Mr. Coyley.
What advice did Lady Thatcher give to the Prime Minister during her visit to Number 10 earlier this week?
What advice do you think Lady Thatcher gave? Salma?
Well, when I was growing up, Maggie Thatcher snatched our milk, and obviously she must have advised me to snap the whole dinner to the coalition government. But I do want to say that with the huge deficit that we have, actually after the Second World War, 238% of the GDP as a proportion was actually debt. It was a deficit.
You're saying it doesn't matter then?
No, what I'm saying is...
Well, we got through after the Second World War.
The lessons. So what did we do? How did our country get out of that? Actually, We created the National Health Service under those circumstances. We had a huge social housing building programme. We invested in transport infrastructure. That meant keeping people in jobs, stimulating the economy, the private sector included.
So you're thinking it can all be done by stimulating the economy?
Well,
that's your idea?
we paid off the debt and we had huge
Salma, I'm not quite clear.
benefits
Do you think that Labour's policies are right, or are you going even further than that?
I think Labour was too cowardly and it betrayed its own values, and that's why it's been punished by the voters. But the consensus...
Okay.
And I'm challenging the consensus that it has to take these cuts, and I'm saying, actually, by investing, not seeing it as a loss, as an investment to get back on, that we can do it. And we've already done it before.
All right. Katie, what advice do you think Lady Thatcher gave, or what advice would you hope she gave?
I'd like to imagine she went in and wielded her handbag with some vigour and told him exactly which kitchen he should select. And I'm sure, in terms of, you know, taking a strong and powerful line, that's what Lady Thatcher always did. And I hope one day many more of us can emulate Lady Thatcher as we waft into politics.
Ben Bradshaw.
I have no idea I have no idea.
Speculate.
I have no idea, and I don't really can. I'm not sure it would have been very useful advice even if she'd given it.
All right, Jeremy Hunt.
Well, I wasn't there, but I imagine she said something like, decide what's right for the country and stick to your guns. And I think this is going to be a very, very difficult period, but I'm sure that's exactly what David Cameron will want to do.
Of course, Gordon Brown had her in as well. What did she say to him?
I've got no idea.
Did he take the advice, do you think?
I've got no... I'm bemused by this fascination with Lady Thatcher.
Because she turns up every time there's a new Prime Minister.
Maybe it's just being courteous to previous Prime Ministers. I don't have a problem with that.
John Major hasn't been formally across the... Gordon Brown certainly hasn't been invited in.
Well, give the guy a rest.
Toby Young.
I hope she told him to stick to his guns and not do a U-turn about anything he's currently proposing to do. And one bit of advice that someone gave me when a film I wrote was about to come out and I was a little worried about the reviews, he said, Toby, don't read your press coverage, weigh it.
OK, I'll take a couple more points. You, sir.
I think the advice Mrs Thatcher gave Mr Cameron is never go to a meeting in Paris during your premiership.
OK, and you, sir?
Yeah, we used to call Margaret Thatcher the Iron Lady when I was growing up, just the way she did things. And I believe she said, deal with it firmly, be firm in whatever you do. OK. Let's go on to another question. Daniel Simpson, please.
Is the continuing oil leak in the Gulf a threat to US-British relations? And was Boris Johnson right to hit back at US politicians' alleged anti-British rhetoric?
The anti-British rhetoric, which appears to be coming from the President himself, saying he wouldn't have Tony Hayward working for him and he wanted to find out who's asked to kick and all that. Jeremy Hunt, are you a bit dismayed about the way Anglo-American relationships are working out over this?
No, because I don't think this is an issue between the two countries, and I think we have to be a responsible government in this situation and recognise that what we have right at the moment is an environmental emergency. I mean, people have compared this in the press to the Piper Alpha disaster in 1988, where there was also a tragic loss of life. But that was releasing about 200 barrels a day into the ocean. This is more like 200,000 barrels a day. It is an absolutely appalling catastrophe.
But Tony Hayward says that the Gulf is a big ocean and it's not going to, you know, it won't take up that much space. And that.
You know,
are you wise to say that, do you think?
I think how BP handle this publicly is really a matter for BP, but what we want to make sure is that they stop...
It's a matter for everybody, isn't it? Because they pay everybody's pension.
Well, what matters is that they stop the leak, and I think what we have to do is everything we can behind the scenes to help both BP and to be in touch with the American government, and the evidence so far is that they are doing something to contain the leak. It seems to be containing about 11,000 barrels a day. But in the end, it's really important that we help them do that, and they have a responsibility to their pensioners, yes, but their primary responsibility now is to stop this environmental catastrophe. And
is President Obama being unfair when he castigates BP for the way they're handling it?
Well, that's a matter for him.
No, I'm asking you.
Yeah, I know, and I'm saying to you that...
It's not a matter for him, we know what he's saying.
It is a matter for him. But it is a matter for him what he says, but I think what I just say is that if there was an oil slick off the coast of Devon, I think people here would be pretty angry. And right now, this oil slick is moving from the coast of Louisiana round to Florida, and people are naturally very worried about their livelihoods, whether it's the fishing industry or the tourism industry. And frankly, my heart goes out to them. I think everyone who lives near a beach or goes on holidays understands what a terrible thing it is to have to cope with an oil slick. And I think we have to practically do what we can to help BP. I think that's the responsible and sensible thing for the government to do.